I wanted to just give a short introduction to what you'll be hearing today. My talk is Holding the Line, Sonic Interstitiality at the Close of 2020, which now seems like quite a long time ago. That the last half of the 2010s was a period of division is an understatement. References to the hyper-partisan divide in the United States have become boilerplate. And economic inequality, racial injustice, and gendered and sexual violence have been the catalyst for protests, civil unrest, and political violence across the Americas. At the same time, the hardening US stance on immigration and migration impermeably recast the nation's borders for those both within and outside of the country as targeted groups were denied entry, and images of children in cages were shown around the world. The 2020 international pandemic caused by COVID-19 further highlighted physical and political boundaries. As countries closed their borders to international travel, schools closed their doors to students, and individuals attempted to cross the social barriers of quarantine and isolation via online video technologies offered by apps such as FaceTime, Hangouts, WhatsApp, and Zoom. Borders, boundaries, and fronteras are often conceived of as visual concepts. We see them on a map, draw lines in the sand, drive past signs announcing the state line, and live in societies that rely on visual cues and biases to support structures of racialization, ableism, and classicism in order to categorize and contain individuals. However, such divisions also become legible and socially and culturally identifiable through sonic rather than visual means. The ability of music and sound to cross, to permeate, and to trespass has made it a key tool for the rendering, identification, and navigation of the boundaries that have marked the past half decade. Indeed, it is the very interstitiality of music and sound, its failure to stop at an imaginary or constructed boundary, that becomes instrumental in both identifying a frontera as well as in casting light on its vulnerabilities. It was the wail of a child's voice, for example, that made the child separation policy taking place along the US border visible. ProPublica's 2018 audio of 10 Central American children rasping and gulping and crying out for their parents while a male border guard mocked the orchestra created widespread outrage at the same time that it participated in the Trump administration's rhetorical efforts to reforge the US border as a tangible barrier through a policy of zero tolerance. While President Donald J. Trump's oft-repeated plans for the construction of a wall on the US border with Mexico proved to be less than robust in their realization, the sound of thousands of red cap supporters shouting "build the wall" at rallies and campaign events nevertheless erected something dense and formidable. This constructive power of sonic rhetoric to build a barrier as obstructive as any physical manifestation was eerily foreshadowed by Anais Mitchell in 2006, when the titular character of Hadestown exhorted his followers, "Why do we build the wall?" It would be a decade between Hades' channeling of collective fear and xenophobia from a stage in Vermont to the show's off-Broadway premiere at the New York Theater Workshop and accompanying 4-song EP. But by 2016, the underworld god's Basso Profundo call and response with his followers to keep out the enemy felt uncannily tied to current events, leading many theater goers and critics to assume that Mitchell had written the song in response to the campaign leading up to the 2016 election.
Why do we build the wall, my children, my children? Why do we build the wall?
Why do we build the wall? We build the wall to keep us free. That's why we build the wall. We build the wall to keep us free.
How does does the wall keep us free? My children, how does the wall keep us free?
How does the wall keep us free? The wall keeps out the enemy, and we build the wall to keep us free. That's why we build the wall, to keep us free.
Even the signifying freight of genre boundaries received heightened attention at the end of the decade. In 2019, Lil Nas X's TikTok frenzy-inducing country trap hit, Old Town Road, went viral, then crossed the divide between the internet and the Billboard charts, briefly. The song's forced removal from Billboard's hot country charts was widely perceived as a racially charged deportation of a sound that deigned to cross an inviolable racial and urban-rural divide, or perhaps that drew attention to the historical falsity of that very boundary. Country music scholar Aaron Fox described the song's revelatory genre crossing on social media a month after the song's release, and he wrote, "This track isn't just a viral sensation. It's a slap in the face of country music discourse. And then it tosses its drink, turns on its Lucchese shod heel, and walks across the bar and dances with a stranger. It doesn't give a F. It makes a mockery of all the appropriation of hip hop that goes unremarked in modern country. It makes a mockery of earnest anti-appropriation talk too. It doesn't calculate a Black country stance or intervention. This is not, despite my prior quips, Modern Sounds Volume 1. It isn't, quote unquote, from where I stand. It doesn't stake out any alternative authenticity. This isn't Hank Williams 3, and it isn't an NPR friendly either. It isn't Rhiannon Giddens, not that I don't love her too. It has no overt polemic. It's just pop music about growing up working class that imagines escaping that into an updated digital gamescape/soundscape version of the cinematic Western myth of country music history. Brilliant pop music, like all the best country. It's Johnny B. Good and Honky Tonk and a T for Texas with a subwoofer. Lil Nas X's joyous gallop across and through genre divides wasn't about transgression, nor, as Fox points out, did it carve out a stance to defend. Rather, it merely wiped those genre boundaries clean off the map, offering a sonic glimpse into a country pop urban music soundscape that had always been there, but that had been carved up by ideas of genre, style, and audience. America's, a hemispheric music journal, was conceived to problematize and explore notions of physical, cultural, and sonic geography. Rather than viewing the Americas as a distinct and bounded geographical entity, we invite scholars and readers to reconsider the region as porous and fluid, as a site for productive crossings and contested encounters, and as a place where a variety of boundaries, both historical and present tense, palimpsestically shape experience and interpretation. The theme of our inaugural issue and of the symposium, Borders, Boundaries, Fronteras, Rethinking American Music, puts this conceptual charge front and center as the authors included consider the multiple meanings that are generated at points of encounter. In today's program, Jacqueline Avila and Teresita Lozano both explore music's ability to prod the supernatural divide between life and death. In her analysis of the 2017 Pixar film Coco, explores the film's use of musical genres, visual style, and memory. At the same time, she explores how the film's specific rendering of these emotions and its journey across the border into the realm of the dead as a kind of emotional catharsis simultaneously draws attention to the US-Mexico border and pushes back against racialized political rhetoric through its deployment of thick sonic semiotics and a joyous celebration of Mexicanidad. Lozano's work similarly draws attention to the US-Mexico border. She explores how corridos, border ballads written for or about the Mexican Catholic martyr Santoribio Romo, who was killed in 1928, have been used to document and process the often near-death experience of border-crossing migrants. Lozano's analysis of these ghost smuggling ballads renders visible multiple ways that they map out migrant experiences, drawing attention to stylistic intersections and generic boundaries within the larger corrido tradition. Mark Gidal and Brandon Stover will both consider sonic boundaries that are formed at the moment of performance. Exploring the policing notions of musical fusion, Gidal will consider the ways that stylistic and generic crossing as symbolic boundary work, allowing listeners to find and create meanings in particular sonic moments, and also creating opportunities for social group formation. Brandon Stover considers multivocal crossings of Japanese language learners who traverse embodied and sonic territories as they learn to vocalize a new language. The Americas Journal, in all of its issues, features a listening in section, which invites authors to intimately explore a musical performance experience or moment. The inaugural listening in authors, Matthew Jones and Sarah Town, both explore the impact of COVID-19 on music making, listening, and dissemination. The journal also features a dialogue section which proposes an intervention into the boundaries that typically separate authorial voices from their interlocutors and research subjects. By offering an opportunity for readers to listen directly to a conversation between a musical artist or composer and a researcher, we shed light on the impact of the framing work done by authors and allow readers to consider the shaping of ideas and questions in the moment that they occur. Alejandro Madrid's dialogue partner, Cuban-American composer Tania Leon, is the subject of his forthcoming book, Tania Leon's Stride, A Polyrhythmic Life, which will be coming out in December, Alejandro? At the end of December. And he'll be discussing issues raised by that project today. Xochitl Chavez interviewed two indigenous Oaxacan women songwriters, Leticia Gallardo Martinez and Diana Martinez Gallardo, about the trans-border and local networks involved in the process of creating their album, Mujeres. Her talk today will focus on collective songwriting as a trans-border and collaborative process. As 2020 ended and our journal went to press, our awareness of the ability of music and sound to delineate, cross, and even obliterate borders has been further heightened. In late November 2020, Cuba's San Isidro movement came to worldwide attention as musicians and artists protested the arrest of rapper Denis Solis and the forced hospitalization and detention of activists who were hunger striking on his behalf. In a public display of dissent rarely seen on the island, protesters engaged in a sing-in in front of the Ministry of Culture, calling for their demands for greater freedom of expression to be heard. The protest represented a generational crossing, with the crowd singing songs by songwriters from the 70s to the present in a powerful musical representation of political solidarity. As surprised as many Cuba watchers were by this open display of dissent by artists and intellectuals who often benefit from state support, it was nothing compared to the shock generated by the widespread demonstrations of last July, when working class Cubans took to the streets across the island, many using the title of a transnationally produced reggaeton hit, Patria y Vida, homeland and life, as a slogan. 2021 has offered a pungent lesson in the potential violence of sonic as well as physical boundary breaking. As the world witnessed a mob storm police barricades at the US Capitol in January, the sound of makeshift battering rams and chants of "Hang Mike Pence" echoing off the building's marble invaded our own private sonic spaces and shaped our understanding of that moment in ways that the visual images alone simply could not. These experiences and the scholars that you'll hear from today suggest that sonic interstitiality and the delineation and transgression of musical boundaries is part of the current zeitgeist in highly charged ways. There will undoubtedly be much to listen to in the coming months and the coming years, and we should, I think, expect such oral encounters and crossings to continue to be at the forefront of our aesthetic and political experience, and to explicitly draw our attention to that front line as we move inexorably deeper into the 2020s. Thank you very much.